Welcome to the Gammative Performance Podcast, episode 28. On this episode of the podcast, I get to talk with Coach Chad Pearson of the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Coach Pearson is one of the most intelligent, most respectful people, and I'm proud to call him one of my friends. On this episode of the podcast, we dive into some current events within strength and conditioning, including sports science, the idea and concept of aggression within sport, and also we talk about respect, discipline, focus, and what it means in the bigger picture. This one has a lot of takeaways, so without further ado, here is Coach Chad Pearson. Coach Pearson, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to hearing some of your ideas and how you do things. So for the listeners at home, will you tell us a little bit about your background, your motivation, and where you are currently?
I will. And, Juan, thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be on here, sharing some stuff with you, and been able to listen to some of your past podcast numbers. So it's really an honor on my end to be here.
I appreciate it.
Background-wise, Midwestern kid, grew up in Iowa, Central Iowa. Played a ton of sports growing up. It was always the best thing about after school was playing some sports. Went to college in Northwest Iowa, a little school called Buena Vista University. Played football there, ran track as well for a few years. So being a two-sport athlete, that was kind of my way of staying in training. We didn't have a strength and conditioning coach at the university at that time, and so really my off-season speed was running track. Really kind of fell in love with strength and conditioning about my sophomore year. We got to a couple of names were really hitting us. That's the first time I heard of Cal Dietz was back then, and there was a video that myself and a really good friend of mine, Shay Thompson, works with the Cincinnati Bengals. We had with Adam Archuleta. I think it was called Freak of Training. Mm-hmm. He was doing some unbelievable stuff in this video, and we were just blown away by it and wanted to do it. And that's what really kind of got us learning. In college, I had my first internship with Chris Doyle at the University of Iowa football. Was looking back on it as I continued on in my career was absolutely one of the most amazing things. I went in there as a kid that just liked to work out hard. That was really it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how much I didn't know at that point. So it really took a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to really fully realize how great that internship was for me. Mm-hmm. But after that, after I graduated college, went to grad school at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, which is where I got on with Eric Klein, who was the head guy there. Spent 2 seasons there. That football staff and strength staff, we got moved up to Northern Illinois in DeKalb and the MAC conference there. We spent 3 seasons up there, had some good success. I worked with multiple teams at those 2 stops. Southern Illinois was the cheer squads, tennis, assisted with, I had baseball, assisted with basketball, assisted with football. At Northern Illinois, I was assistant for football, directed baseball, softball, women's basketball, had wrestling for a short time, kind of had a lot of those. After those 3 seasons at NIU, we went to the University of Minnesota. Again, the same football staff, the same, still with Eric Klein. We were at Minnesota from 2011 to the end of the 2016 season. So 6 years up there, and really that was football only on our side. A fantastic experience for us. Really was an amazing thing to be a part of. After coaching change, some switch ups there, found myself with an opportunity to join Tom Arth, the head football coach here at UTC, Tennessee Chattanooga, to be his director of athletic performance and head football strength coach. So this is going to be, we are in my 2nd season here at UTC. Okay. And that's been the journey.
Okay. Awesome. Will you kind of dive it a little bit into your motivation?
Yeah, absolutely. My motivation, my why, my mission, that's all the same to me. And it changed, 3 years ago when my first son was born, right? So I've been a strength coach for 10 years at that point, thinking that it was all about how adversity makes people stronger. I thought that was my why, putting them through the discipline, the rigor of what we do, and I thought that's really what it was. But ended up being a life-changing experience when I had my first son, Roman. He's 3 now, so my biggest thing was I want to make a better world for him and his little brother to grow up into, right? And by doing so, I'm also impacting millions of other children. But on the selfish end, what my life mission is that I wake up every single day and that I hold myself to the standard of what I would want my sons and your kids and everybody else's kids to grow up to see a better man. So when we talk about the very cliche things you hear about in sport, like humility, respect, discipline, integrity, those type of things, I think that's best represented by, we hold them to that standard because my kids' lives are at stake. If I let you be late, if I let you be undisciplined, if I let you be disrespectful to people or talk the wrong way or just be lazy, be these things that we don't want as an athlete, what am I really setting my children up and their future generations for as far as what they're going to be? Because in this world, we're not, as a strength coach, I won't be able to be at every single thing in my kid's life. It's one of those things you have to accept as a sport coach or a strength coach. And so if I'm able to put better men in the world so that maybe one of these former players of mine is going to be a community leader of my son. Maybe he's going to be his coach, maybe his boss. Maybe they've got children or siblings that are going to be the same age. And so if I have that ability to take these things and channel our standards and put them into place, my son and everybody else's children will have better role models to look up to.
No, I like that. And some of the things that you touched on, right? So like integrity, discipline, respect. So a lot of that rings true in the martial arts as well. So will you kind of explain how your sport background influences your outlook and your training philosophy?
Yeah. So especially with the martial arts, I got into martial arts as a kid for a few years. But then it was after, when I was at Northern Illinois, I still felt young and athletic, and I still wanted to do something. And so MMA was big. This was 2008. 2008 and 9, so I wanted to be an MMA fighter. So I found some gyms and I was training everything. I was training boxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, you name it. And I was getting pretty good at all those things, but not really, really good at one thing. And what I had was working on doing a fight, an amateur fight. And then I was like, that card got canceled. So I was like, I want to get really, really good at one thing, make that my backbone, and then pick this other stuff up again. And that's when I started with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and really fell in love with it. And what made me fall in love with it was so much more of the fact that, and this is a training philosophy for me too. This is a competitive philosophy for me. Jiu-Jitsu doesn't really depend on luck, right? You could get lucky and hit somebody in the jaw the right way and they're out, or you could get hit in the jaw the wrong way and you're out. There's a lot of luck, timing, just some odd stuff that could really impact the fight. But when in a jiu-jitsu match or jiu-jitsu fight, you're either going to choke somebody out or severely injure them, and the only other option is to tap and say that you are better than me, you are superior. And that's kind of what our competitive identity is like. It's impose your will so much that they just absolutely have to quit. And that's what excited me most about it. But it also taught me so much about, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu especially taught me more about humility and respect than about anything, right? Because I was a strong, powerful guy going into this gym, and I was just getting worked by, guys that are 50 pounds lighter than me. I'm 6 inches shorter. And then so it gives you a confidence and a humility that, I thought I could walk into a restaurant or a bar as a young single guy, whatever, and think I'm like the most invincible guy here.
Yeah.
Until I roll in the gym and I think, man, this little guy that works at the bank could just destroy me. So I really need to check my ego when I walk into these places, because you never know who's got such an amazing skill set. It's dangerous. Yeah. But it did give me the confidence, and this is with all martial arts, that I had and have that ability that if things do go wild, I find myself in an extremely bad situation, confidence that I'm going to be okay. I'll survive. Whatever. So it gives you confidence, not that you go out looking for a fight type of stuff. But it teaches you, I think all martial arts and those just teaches such confidence, respect, and humility.
No, I really like that, and I think a lot of people need to take a lesson from the martial arts in that respect, because the egos, even in just the industry of strength and conditioning, you know what I mean? It's like you don't really know where people came from, their skill set. So I think that's one important concept that we can all draw from that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Posturing has its place in strength conditioning. It doesn't have its place when you're on the mat, so to speak.
Yeah. No, I like that. Moving forward a little bit, right? So I like the X's and O's, and most kind of podcasts, and even a lot of mine have focused on that. But let's dive a little bit into a different realm of more some current topics in strength and conditioning, right? So the first one is sports science, right? So sports science promises a lot of things, right? But is sports science over-promising and under-delivering?
Actually, I like that question. I probably have a horrible answer, right? So my answer is it's both, and or is underutilized a better term.
Okay.
But I think what people are promising in sports science is correct. And I don't think that it's sports science that's under delivering. I think it's I'll just go out and say it. I think it's sport coaches, or possibly it's strength coaches that are not fully understanding it or not learning enough to utilize it the way it should be.
Okay.
It's not just it's not a recruiting tool. It's not something that if you just put these on their backs, it stops injuries. Just by wearing this device or wearing this monitor, that doesn't do you any good. But it's got to be: are you getting enough information, and do you have enough education or experience to then put that information into play? But the relationship to the sport coach probably is going to be the biggest one. Right? You can have greatest information, you can have all the answers, you've got 10 years of data put aside, and you can predict almost everything. But if that sport coach doesn't have any willingness to put the ego aside and learn and utilize that information, it's going to be underutilized. And so then you're getting your question of overpromising and under-delivering. So I really, it only makes sense if you've got the info and you know how to use it, and that coach has the buy-in, and you get a football staff, you've got 10 plus coaches, 10 position coaches, head coaches. What is their buy-in? Where are they coming from? Or they've been somewhere that has it, somewhere that doesn't have it. Are they willing to listen to the head coach who's bought in, or to the strength staff who's bought in that this, you really need to do these things. This is what the information is telling us. And then it really, you have a couple of good events that hey, you did keep somebody healthy for a season. You did. You showed that they had good fitness or they had good speed going into a season. Those are things that they can look at afterwards in hindsight. So, okay, maybe I'll pay more attention to it. But it's got to be the people you're giving the information to have to utilize it.
Okay, so no, that's a good answer. So with that, right? So a lot of strength and conditioning, sport coach relationships. There's not necessarily a sports science department, right? And obviously, in an understaffed strength and conditioning department, who does that kind of responsibility fall upon to dive into the sports science? Is it solely us? Should it be a little bit more on sport coaches, or how should we balance that?
I think between the strength or athletic performance side, the next closest is going to be your athletic medicine. Because what we try to do is say so and so gets an injury, they sprain an ankle, they're out for a couple of weeks. Right? And so when that person's beginning their rehab and they're trying to get back into practice, it's that relationship with the athletic training, athletic medicine, and strength and conditioning that gets this guy back to readiness. But you need to have some numbers, okay?
Yeah.
You hit deep speeds. This is the typical total load or intensity of a practice. Let's get him to certain percentages of those numbers, and then you're working together hand in hand that way. Now you can come back and say, Coach, not only is he cleared to participate by medical standard, he's cleared to perform at a high level because he's back to that. So I think it falls into not having a sports scientist. And here in my office, I've got 20 of our GPS units laying here that we share between two teams. After every practice, I download the information, and I send that information to all the coaches and our athletic training staff. And the athletic training staff's probably the other ones that look at it the most. Hey, so-and-so's complaining of this. Because take a look at his numbers. This guy had a red alert, increase from his last practice. Those are the kind of things that we look at. Then we just push. We don't, especially here, we don't have some of the resources you really want. So we try to push. If the coach can't take reps off, I get that, right?
Yeah.
They need those game reps. But here's some things we could do. Here's nutrition facts. Here's to help you out. Here's some regeneration, some recovery, some sleep things that are going to help you. Because we can't afford you to not practice. You need those reps to get better, to play well.
Yeah.
So here's 5 other options. Usually the going to the position coach is kind of the last place we want to go with that, because hey, I don't want to go up to the coach and say, hey, your best player, you need to sit him today. They're gonna toss you out the window right there. So it's gonna be how can us in athletic medicine, and if you've got nutrition, you got any of those things, how can they work together to kind of help that in that regard.
So you made an interesting point, right? So players can't be taking game reps off, which I completely agree with, right? But so with that concept, there's a concept of like game speed, right? That sport coaches often use. So what is your take on this, right? Are sport coaches effectively blunting their training effects by doing too many reps at game speed? Because we know that if we're training in the ATP PC system, right, we're going to need a larger rest to work ratio. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, that was a very interesting question. To me, we kind of try to define game speed, and I think game speed is more so defined by it has an emotional and psychological weight to it, right? There's it's just the game itself.
Yeah.
When you actually look at some of the information, the data, I mean, we've had Tuesday practices that are more intense than certain games. We've had wide receivers who get 20% more yards, 20% more high-speed yard on a Tuesday practice than they get on game day. So but they come back Wednesday, whereas on opposed to a game, you have such an emotional and psychological weight to it that they need that Sunday, because they put so much into their, the heart and soul into that game, but there's that dump the day afterwards, right? That emotional dump from it. And so just that definition itself, agree to what is game speed. I think game speed has so much to do with the psychological factor. But I think the question is also switched because of the work to rest ratio that you're getting in practice. It's not game speed anymore, because now it's not this 40-second play clock, and it's not, hey, we just had let's just say a 6-play drive with a TV timeout, an injury timeout. Now we're on the bench for 15 minutes. That's like, game speed's really not that intense. You've got so many breaks in practice.
Exactly.
You're taking half the time for the most part, an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you're getting the same workload as a 4-hour game. And so I think it's, it's not, they can say they're trying to make it game speed, but in all actuality, it's not.
Yeah.
Because they're just, it's too frequency, the volume's too high.
Yeah.
Now with that, I think that's why on our end, football is a sport where it's really hard to do things half speed. Like there's walkthroughs, of course, but you can't have your quarterbacks and receivers drop back at half speed and throw a half speed ball to a half speed route. So it just doesn't get done that way. You can't small side football, other than some inside run outside, whatever that may be. But so with football especially, and this is going to probably work for other sports as well, you just have to control the volume and the duration. If we want to get more intensity out of practice, we go longer, or we do certain periods longer. If we want to cut the intensity out of practice, we may cut certain periods that are extremely stressful, or shorten down. Hey, instead of 15 minutes, let's get this thing down to 5 to 7 minutes for today, so we can take that intensity. Speeds are the same. Intensity of that rep is the same. It's just going to be the volume is cut down, and that's going to help us with the training there.
I think that's really important, right? Because with the if we're going back to sports science, with a lot of this tracking, we can see that some coaches are pushing their kids to playing workloads of 2, 3, 4, 5 games within the week, within that practice, just because you're doing so much of a load. So I think that's important to pick and choose what you actually need to do, so you can cut down that total volume. Because if volume's chronically high and we're not adapted to it, that's a risk for injury. So I think that's a really important concept.
Yeah, absolutely. We go from and this may you had your ACL and NBA and NFL injuries, so I'm going to kind of jump ahead of you and segue into that.
Yeah.
If you look at a summer off season, we get 8 hours a week with these guys. There's so much we're trying to accomplish inside of 8 hours a week. As soon as camp starts, preseason camp starts, that number jumps straight to 20. Right? And so is it necessarily smart to just say, hey, we went from 8, we could really accomplish this much physically. This is what they're physically ready for.
Yeah.
This much volume, this much intensity, this much, whatever it may be. Is it ideal to take them the full 20 hours using that and going 2.5 hour practice? I don't believe so. And so again, I work with an incredibly smart and resourceful head football coach that we break up. We only go a certain number of days in a row, take a day off, or a walk-through day.
Yeah.
A certain number, we kind of build that number up. 3 days in a row, recover day. 4 days in a row, recover day. 5 days in a row, recover day. And usually try not to go more than 5 in a row, because really that's what their bodies have been prepped for, is Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And with that, we also bump the intensity, the duration of practice. First 3 practices are 75 minutes. Back to back. That's longer than we've done in the summer. The amount of volume we can get in, say, an aerobic, we do a lot of tempo runs on twice a week. What's the actual volume we can get? What's the actual yardage of just below 50% speed, and then what's our volume of above 60%, 70, 75, 80% speed? So those are the things that if they haven't physically gotten close to that and built up that baseline of those speeds, when you do go into a preseason camp, and intensities and durations are so intense, these guys produce so much power. This is where you look at NFL, NBA preseason. There's so many injuries.
Yeah.
And this is going to be preface it. This is a pure opinion of mine. But when NFL athletes go home in July to do their own thing with their own guys, sure, they're working hard, but is that training directed in the magnitudes and outputs that they're going to be, in the speed and the intensity that they're going to be needing in preseason camp? Is the tissue, the tendons, is it getting the stress that it should be to build up? I think that's why, again, my opinion, the Achilles is a big one.
Yeah.
The ACL is a big one, because that tissue just is not prepared for the intensity, volume, and output that these amazing athletes can produce. At preseason.
No, I agree. So the issue, in your opinion, is more of a lack of prep, right?
In my opinion, absolutely. I think it's a lack of prep that just has not been progressed properly.
Okay. No, that's a good point, because people at such a high level, I think it's important to know, especially in like basketball, football, they focus a lot more on the training piece, but as far as in basketball and sports like that, the training culture is not necessarily set. A lot of these guys grow up, and we're talking strictly NBA in this regard. They grow up playing basketball, and that's what they know how to do. That's what they like to do. That's what they got to the league to do. And so the training piece is not necessarily there, right? So we don't have the prep. So you can see a lot of that in some of these guys, right? With the way they come into the league their first year, just in terms of physical assets, So I think that's an important piece to keep in mind is the preparation, even at that stage.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with basketball players in particular. It seems that when they say they're training, when they say they're working out, it's on the gym floor. It's wearing a vest and dribbling basketball. It's doing basketball drills. And so these guys guys and girls that are playing basketball at a high level, they're just playing basketball all year round. The NBA, even they get done with the finals, those guys are about a month off, and they're playing some preseason ball again.
Yeah.
Like where's their? They need some general prep training. They need some volume, either reduction or some progression there. Because that's a long season, and it's so the monotony of playing that game on that surface with those shoes and those angles is just so consistent. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note as well. Like these college players, that's who they look up to, right? So that's who they see, and that's who they emulate. And so, in terms of preparation, they might not necessarily be doing the things they need to do as well. And so, you get them in the college setting, you get them for a certain amount of time, but that time off and those summers and things like that when they're not with you, like that's very important time that they are contributing to overuse injuries versus neutralizing that kind of stuff. So I think younger athletes need to take that into account as well. Is like we need to get that out there more as far as information, because you guys need to balance it out.
Absolutely.
So no,
I
that's
think, the two most dangerous times in college strength and conditioning are that first week of summer and the first week of winter. And I think there's a lot of factors that contribute to that, but lack of fitness is a huge one. Whether they're doing their May take-home packet or not, you can't assume that they're going to be ready for pure day one, ready to go. Here we go. Here's the full first week. You still have to build them up there, and a lot of times those things happen. Bad things happen in those phases because there might be a new coach who's got to set a new culture, set a new standard. They didn't have a great season, so they got to change some certain things. But we still have to, understand we're working with humans, and there's some things you have to be more careful and progress. But yeah.
No, that's good. That's good. So if we put this in perspective, right? So if people at the professional level, and this is across sports, are still having these injuries, these soft tissue injuries, how can we take that and translate that into the college realm, right? So is this the cost of doing business right now, or how can we better serve this population, right? Because everyone wants to point the finger when an injury happens, right? But what can we do as far as education, as far as preparation, and as far as really just getting these kids ready for their sport?
That's tough. Because we can say in the professional ranks it's time away from their actual strength coach. In the college ranks, there's not as much time away from the strength coach as people think. There's a lot of their time of the year is with the strength conditioning coach. But I think there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right? So what I'm doing for our athletes is going to be different than anybody else in our conference across the country, what they're doing particular for their athletes. So it's really hard to pinpoint, what can be done, to say, hey, you need to do X type of training the month before your season starts, or you need to do X type of training, volume, intensity, sets, reps type of training, after the season. I think that's really hard to pin down because everybody's been successful with different types of training, and when I say successful, I mean it because their team won a lot of games, right? So the world that we live in is somebody else has said this before me, so I'm not taking credit for it, but we're a process-driven industry in a results-driven world. Right. So our worth is going to be based off of, well, how well did we recruit and how many games did we win? That's really what it comes down to, because I could do programs of training XYZ and my team won 0 games, or at this school they're doing the same thing for training is X, Y, and Z and they won 12 games. It really, it's really an unfair. I won't say unfair. That's a pity is me thing, but it's an unfortunate event that we just have to deal with as strength and conditioning coaches. That you really just can't pinpoint what should be done because we base it off of how well their team played.
No, that's good. That's a good point. So what are your thoughts on sport coaches bringing in specialists, right? So a lot of sport coaches, one of their coach friends has a specialist for injury or speed, agility, right? And they say, oh, it's not necessarily we don't like what you're doing, or we want to tell you what to do, but we want to hear from this person. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's dangerous for the athlete, because now you're having nothing's contextual anymore, right? So you're bringing in your sprint guy, and he has no idea what's going on in the weight room, or what that maybe it's a 3 or 4 week phase of training, right? So maybe you're not able to what you're doing in the weight room isn't really going to be optimal for your speed guy out on the field or the track.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so now they're hindering each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think any good strength and conditioning staff and coach is that jack of all trades,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you have, you know, do you really want a specialist if they don't know what else is going on with the athlete?
Mm-hmm.
Strength coach, we know what's going on, what we're doing on the field, what they're doing out of practice, what they're doing in the weight room. It's all this, you know, it's one voice that's bringing it in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I said, it's contextual. If you take your injury to a surgeon, they're going to want to cut you open. You take your injury to you know, a holistic doctor, they're going to, you know, there's going to be, we want to just do some herbs on it type of thing.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's where everybody's going to want to push things to their side more.
Mm-hmm.
The speed guy's going to say we need more speed training. The strength guy's going to say we need more strength training. The mobility guy's going to say we need more ability.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's just dangerous to the, like I said, to the athlete's development.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just an ego trip for all those specialists.
Yeah.
It's going to be an ego trip from that strength coach who's got to give his team away to the specialist that's working speed, or that's working whatever.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, we are serving athletes. Our job is to make our athletes stronger, faster, more resilient, and you know, and better people. And by spreading that, I think we lose some of that.
No, I think that's really important. That's a really good point as well. So kind of transitioning a little bit. So we talked a little bit about martial arts, right? And in recent martial arts news, right, we had the McGregor versus Khabib fight. And so as a profession, in terms of sports and athletics, we value aggression and pride, right? But then we also demonize it at the same time. So what happens when that aggression and pride goes wrong? Like, are we perpetuating that, or how do we kind of handle this?
Man, that's tough. I bought the McGregor Khabib fight, and I got exactly what I paid for. Like, and I haven't bought an MMA fight in for a while, but that was one. Like, yeah, I've got to see this because I don't know what's going to happen pre, post. And I've followed Khabib's guys when there was a melee in a casino hotel with the Diaz brothers years ago. Right? And then McGregor, he's no saint himself, but like that's exactly what I was expecting.
Right, and that's what everybody wanted. Like that's what we all wanted. But then but now we're like, oh man, they're such terrible people. You know what I mean? So like that's crazy.
And it's you take the sport too, the NFL and college football with targeting that nobody can still explain, or the in the NFL whatever they're calling that, the projecting towards the head and helmet. Like that's what people want to see.
Exactly.
Those are the highlights that people want to see. That's how you're going to knock that ball out. And it's as they have the roughing the passer call now in the NFL. I mean, it just makes people so angry. So I think that's where it's going wrong. Where you're starting to lose interest from the viewer. Because they're taking the game away from the players. Player safety is extremely important. I get what we're doing there, but I don't know if I think we say player, and this is in professional ranks. I think we say player safety is important, but at the end of the day, it's the dollar sign.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of just goes back. If we go back to like early culture, right? We had coliseums and things like that, and this is going way back and maybe some abstract or whatever, but. That's what we pay to see, right? We pay to see the gore and that kind of thing. And we're in modern day, so our standards are a little bit different. The culture is a little bit different, and player safety is important. But at the same time, I mean, players know what they're signing up for, right? Like some of that responsibility has to be put on them, right?
Correct. Yep.
So, I mean, overall, it's a very interesting concept of how we value it, and we want kids, you got to be more aggressive. You got to, prideful and that kind of thing. But then when they actually take on those traits, we start to demonize it,
Yeah, that's stuff, and I think that's very cultural. But as you said, it's this fighting, this battle, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's been around for millennia.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's who we are as humans. It's a mammal type of thing that we do. that's tough.
Yeah, no, that's tough, and that's not really, there's no true answer to that. That's just kind of one of the things that, as preparation specialists or whatever you want to call it, strength coaches, that's one of the things we have to deal with is like, do we perpetuate it? Do we, kind of just let it be and coexist with it, or how we handle it? So it's just one of those things that's out there that someone's going to have to crossroads with eventually. So I just kind of wanted to shine a little bit of light there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So moving forward, right? So what are some resources that have had a big impact on you, whether that's a book, a podcast, a seminar, a conversation, or anything of the like?
Okay. Read a lot of books.
Mm-hmm.
I try to get into podcasts. I got about a 30-minute drive to work every day, so I really try to get podcasts. But what I find myself doing on the podcast type of side of things is that I just kind of try to find a particular person who I want to hear.
Yeah.
And what I found within myself within the last couple of years is that this message, this group of people I've been listening to, it's a very homogenous group. It's they're just everybody's just one degree of separation off from each other. And so when I find myself in that situation where it's hearing the same thing from the same people who are they're kind of buddy, whatever it may be, I try to drift myself away from that and go completely opposite, go something abstract. But that's where my podcast might be all over the place.
Yeah.
Books wise, that I think some of the biggest resources for me are going to be books that are on whether it's philosophical, military, leadership, and just self-development. So a couple of my favorite books that are go-tos that are probably going to be a little bit off the script. On Combat is a book I've read 5 or 6 times that by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. And it's essentially the psychology and physiology of killing somebody. And like that's the ultimate fear, human fear is to kill somebody. So these are the things that happen in that moment, right? This is what happens to your heart rate. When your heart rate gets above 150, the kind of the red zone or yellow zone.
Yeah.
Now you've got tunnel vision, you've got auditory exclusion, you've lost fine motor control. And so I take some of these ideas and think, okay, here's our quarterback walking into a stadium that's 110,000 people. The fear, he hasn't done any exercise, but his heart rate's now at 185. And now he's lost some fine motor control. Now he's got tunnel vision. Now he's not hearing things because it's his body has taken this fear and done some changes. And so, what are ways that we can get them out of that situation? That's just one example of that book, but that's a phenomenal one.
That's an interesting concept too, because we can see some similar things in a flow state, right? So there's the loss of perception with reality, the loss of hearing outside stimuli at the same time, tunnel vision, so that's kind of an interesting concept. So I might have to look into that one as well.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the next book I was going to mention was Flow.
Okay.
Be High, Set Me High. That one has been really interesting for me because there's been 2 other books that have come out, both by Stephen Kotler, The Rise of Superman, and then I think it was Stealing Fire, Catching Fire, that they both kind of get into different types of flow states. But so much of that research goes back to Set Me High. But that's another one, too, that's been a very eye-opening one for me. Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. That's kind of been a hot one lately. I really like his books. Extreme Ownership is one that I'm a big fan of. We're actually reading that with our leadership council this year. Legacy, about the New Zealand All Blacks, we read that one as a leadership council last year. The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin, former chess prodigy turned martial artist. That's the biggest thing there is he was a very gifted child, but he kind of shows you that there's an art to learning. Why he was so good at these things was because of his ability to learn. And then of course you got your basic strength coach books, Super Training, Science and Practice, along those ones. But I try to read a few different books at a time, right? So I'm going to have my one leisurely read that might be some sort of personal development. Maybe it's a public speaking book or something that's just kind of fun to read. Maybe it's maybe it's fiction, right? Then I've got a book that's kind of my daily read, right now the Daily Stoic, whatever it may be, and then I usually got a book that takes a few months for me to finish. So currently I'm trying to break down Fergus Connolly's Game Changer. So that's trying to do one chapter a week is my goal, breaking that book down. So that's kind of how I kind of get a personal book, a book that's going to make me a better strength coach, and then a book that's, down the road that's more of an educational book.
Okay, I like it. And then moving forward to this last segment, right? So just a few quick rapid fire questions. So if you have any, what are some quotes or mantras that you live by?
Okay, I've got three. First one, it's a quote by Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, and it's, why do we complain? This is what we're here for. And I think I use that for my athletes. This is summer training. This is winter training. This is what we're here for. We can't complain. And then as a strength coach, we work long days. We have early mornings. This is what we're here for. There's no complaining. So that sticks with me. Miyamoto Musashi, think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. And then the famous Abraham Lincoln, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Those are my three go-tos.
All very good. I like it. So what's the best advice you've ever been given?
Okay, the first one is really be where your feet are. I think that's important for any coach, any parent, any husband, whatever it may be. It's just to be where your feet are. You can't be. I can't be here in my office and have my mind elsewhere. I can't be at home and have my mind back in the weight room. Right. So the biggest thing is to be where your feet are. And then on the training side, not so much just sat down was told this, but it's kind of an advice over time was, the training doesn't always need to be fun. It just needs to be effective. Right. So if you're talking, training is day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade. That's training. Working out is random fun every day.
Yeah.
Right. That's not really an end goal in sight. That's just sweating. That's getting tired. Making your muscles fatigue. Whereas training, there's times as a guy who still trains and lifts hard, lifts heavy himself. I don't have to be in such a great mood. Like, this is just what I have to do today. I'm putting myself through this max effort. I'm going to maybe in the strength phase, power phase, whatever it is. It doesn't need to be fun. I just need to do this and get it done and do it the way it needs to be done.
No, I think that's an important distinction. Okay. So in contrast to that, what's the worst advice you've ever been given?
I struggle with this one. I can't think of, if I was ever given bad advice, at the time I was given it probably sounded like good advice, and then it would only be in hindsight that you realize that it wasn't. And so by then, it was just a learning experience. So anything that's been bad has probably already been converted to a learning experience, and then thus making it a good piece of advice.
Yeah.
But really, there's nothing to note in particular on that one. That's the toughest one.
Okay. What are one of the biggest struggles, or has there been a moment in time that you've carried with you that has made a big difference in your life?
Yeah, I think there's two. The identity of who we are as strength coaches. So if a coach identifies himself or herself by the title they have, the school that they're at, the team that they work with, the understanding that can be taken from you in an instant. You are a coaching change happens. You are no longer this. So if you identify so deeply with, say, who are you? Coach this at this school, working with this team, this team, this team. What if that's taken from you? What are you now? And so I think finding your identity has been one that you just need to be careful with. And then, another big struggle I had, and this has been a few years in the making that I've really kind of mastered, was coaches in sports always talk about the 24-hour rule, right? So 24 hours after a win or a loss, like, that's got to be done with. What I found out was, if our team lost the game, I was a bad husband. I was a bad father for that first 24 hours because I was still so mad or I was so anxious, whatever it may have been. So what I've done is, kind of just the way I see it. I took my 24-hour rule and turned it to a 24-minute rule because I can't. I owe it to my kids when I get home after a game that I have to be like, they don't give a crap if we won or lost the football game. They want to see their dad there and have fun and love it. And my wife does not want me to come home and be miserable because, again, we lost and a bunch of kids lost the football game. So that's been a big struggle of mine, is that I've got to be there in that moment after the game, whatever it is, get all my emotion out. Maybe it's that drive home that I get home, that it's washed away completely. I owe it to the team the next day because we're already training on Sundays for our next game, and that's within that's probably 12 hours. So we can't afford. I owe it to them to not be in a bad place, a bad mood, because we've already got to move on. And so I think that's something that has been a struggle for me to overcome, and that I think is extremely beneficial that people need to understand. I think it goes with your identity too. If I identify with 18 to 22-year-old kids winning games, that goes both sides. So you be careful with it.
Yeah, no, I like that. No, awesome. Okay, so what are some projects you're currently working on, and how can people kind of reach out to you and follow your journey?
Projects-wise, I was trying to keep a tent on a circus out here a little bit. So, mid-season is really trying to keep, with the football team, keeping us healthy, powerful, strong, and resilient. I really want to be, one of the best teams in the country come November.
Yeah.
And if things take care of themselves ahead of that, that's really a good sign for us. In our department, we've got 5 good strength coaches here, including myself, UTC, that, a lot of our teams are in play. And the biggest thing there is, we make sure that it's about the athlete. We make sure that they're physically prepared, mentally prepared, emotionally prepared for their season. And it's, there's some things we're doing here technology-wise that, I think for a school our size are pretty interesting, whether that's GPS. We've got some, we're going to be getting some more technology on our racks with cameras and barcode analyzers. So there's going to be some cool things there. But, I think social media-wise, we share a lot of that stuff. I think I try to be the same person as a husband, father, brother, and son on my Instagram, social media, as I am as a coach, right? But Instagram, I'm very open with it. It's C Pearson 42, so CPEARSON 42, and then Twitter is at Chad Pearson 42. Email is chad-pearson@utc.edu, and those are 3 ways that, if people are hitting me up, I'm gonna respond, I'm gonna reply back. We really try to put a lot of our training, our staff training on there as well, that we're playing around with certain things. Maybe we're gonna add some interesting training things that, we're just playing around with to see if, somebody says, hey, we did this way at this place, one time. We're great, we'll take that idea and see how we can fit it into our own.
Okay, awesome. Well, Coach, thank you so much for your time. This has been fantastic. I really enjoy getting into, some different concepts within the field of strength and conditioning and the bigger field of performance. So thank you so much for the discussion and the ideas, and hopefully we can connect again soon in the future.
And Coach, thank you very much. To be a part of this is awesome, and it's really an honor to help you out and to discuss this stuff with you. So thank you.
Thanks again for joining me. And if you enjoy the podcast, please go ahead and head to iTunes and give it a 5-star rating, or go ahead and write a review, or both if you're feeling so motivated. Next week we'll have another exciting guest. But until then, this is the Gamut of Performance Podcast.